What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and the second round of the NHL playoffs are now come and gone, and this is going to be my reaction video to what I saw in the second round. We're going to readjust the camera a little bit with Ben there. There we go. We'll get this out of the way right away. Second round, I'm calling it 2-2. As far as my predictions went for the second round, calling myself 2-2 for the second round, which would leave me 5-7 overall for the playoffs. Not making up any ground, but not losing any ground either, so I'll take it. I still got time to finish above 500, but I'm going to need a little bit of luck. But 2-2, I correctly predicted the 1v7 in the East, as well as the 5v6 in the East, and incorrectly predicted the 2v8 and 3v4 in the West. But now let's talk about a little bit about what happened in these series, and just the way that I reacted to them. The surprises continue. In these playoffs. We'll start in the East, of course, the 1v7 matchup, which was the number 1 New York Rangers versus the number 7 Washington Capitals. I predicted that New York would win this series in 6 games, 4 games to 2. New York ended up winning this series in 7 games, 4 games to 3. Every game in this series except for Game 1 ended up being a 1-goal game. That included 2 games that went to overtime, including that triple overtime marathon in Game 3 that actually made this closer to an 8-game series than a 7-game series. So this was, I mean, this series was razor thin right from start to finish, and Washington played that way all playoffs, going to 7 games with going to 7 games with Boston, and so, you know, that was Washington sort of lived and died on these one-shot moments that either they get the one shot or the opponent gets the one shot, and unfortunately in Game 7 it ended up being that the Rangers got the one shot that the Capitals needed. The team that scored first in every game in the series won every game. That stayed true right from Game 1 through to Game 7. So you knew that I had this feeling of dread when Brad Richards scored about a minute and a half into the game. I figured, what's the point of watching the rest of the game, because they scored first, so they're going to win. Unfortunately for Washington, that's what ended up happening. Michael Del Zotto scores the series winner, and that was a little representative to me about how Washington needed more production from their back end. New York's back end outpointed Washington's 14-9 in this series, which is not a huge deficit, but Washington, and I've said it all playoffs, Washington needed more from their back end. That they have this top pair, but they needed more guys to step up on the back end to chip in offensively, and that unfortunately did not happen in this series. And Mike Green was, especially in Game 7, like, he's so hesitant to shoot the puck, and it's so frustrating. And it actually reminds me of when I was watching Moosehead's playoff games, Conrad Abeltzhauser, who San Jose Sharks fans will be getting to know Conrad in the next couple of years. He was actually, I believe, just signed a 3-year deal with San Jose fairly recently. But Abeltzhauser is a big, tall German defenseman. He's very good at shooting the puck, but he's so hesitant. He would fake these shots and then pass off all the time, and it was so frustrating. And when he finally did shoot the puck, he actually scored a couple of goals. So it's, you know, guys on defense, you gotta learn to shoot the puck a little more. The Rangers, I felt, just had more scoring balance. They had better scoring at the top and just had more balance across the whole across their whole thing. Brad Richards, of course, led the series with 4 goals. You had both Ovechkin and Jason Chimera for Washington, who had 3 goals each, but past the 2 of them, no other player on the team scored more than 1 goal. So, you know, New York's attack was just more balanced. And you had Gaborik, who led the series with 7 points, so he was a point a game. Rangers just had more balance. Lundqvist, we'll talk about the goaltenders for a second. Lundqvist absolutely shined, reinforcing why I think he's the runaway favorite for the Hart Trophy. But I said it before the series started that Braden Holtby made me a believer and a fan. Braden Holtby in these playoffs and even in this series has proven to me that he has established himself as a legit #1 goaltender in the NHL. Very much look forward to what he does next season. I think I'll be certainly be taking a waiver on drafting him in my fantasy leagues. Hopefully he has earned in the fans' eyes and in management's eyes the #1 spot. He proved it to me. I know we had got to temper our expectations there because Leafs fans did the same thing with James Reimer, and look how that's ended up. But he's only got 30-some games of NHL experience. But I think if you give him a full season, Holtby will show you something special. So I hope that's what happens. That's what happens for the Capitals going forward. Got to be frustrating for the Capitals. Haven't made it past the second round since I believe it was 96 or 97 or something like that. So got to be frustrating for them. Came down to one shot that they just couldn't get. Rangers moving on. The 5v6 in the East, which was the #5 Philadelphia Flyers against the #6 New Jersey Devils. I was given all kinds of shit once again from Philadelphia Flyers homers and people telling me that I was a Devils fanboy and I'm just going to pick against anybody who plays Philadelphia. No, I picked against Philadelphia because I thought New Jersey was going to win the series, and look what happened. New Jersey Devils defeat the Philadelphia Flyers 4-1 in 5 games. I predicted New Jersey was going to win it in 7 games, but the Devils came through 2 games earlier. And you know what? Ever since the playoffs started, I said that once Philadelphia ran into a team that they couldn't score on at will, that they were going to be in trouble. And what happened? They ran into Jersey. The first game, Jersey played Philly's game. They played this run-and-gun game, and Philly ended up winning that game. When Jersey started playing their game, from about midpoint of game 2 or into game 3 forward, Philly had virtually no answer for them. And that's exactly what I was saying. And another thing I said, there's one thing that's going to derail Philadelphia in these playoffs, it's their goaltending. And you know what? Their goaltending was crippling to them in these playoffs. Here's the final numbers on Ilya Bryzgalov. I've got them right here. 5-6, 5 wins, 6 losses, 37 goals against in 11 games, 3.46 goals against average, and an .887 save percentage. I am sorry, Breezy, that is not going to cut it in the playoffs. You're going to have to get back out there hunting bears in the woods or whatever the hell you talked about. The suspension to Claude Giroux, it did certainly play a role. I won't sit here and say that it didn't play a role, but after the Game 3 loss in overtime, I just felt like Philly was totally deflated. They lose that very close game in overtime, and I just felt like emotionally that just zapped them. In Games 4 and 5, I thought they played terribly. It seemed like losing that overtime game in Game 3, for whatever reason, they couldn't mentally come back from that. Of course, added to that is the fact that they were playing a very good team on the other end, and it was the Devils' forecheck as well as their penalty kill that was absolutely devastating to Philly. Philly was only, I believe it was 3 for 19 on the power play throughout the entire series, so, the Devils' penalty kill certainly played a big role in them winning this series. And for Jersey, it came down to their best players played as their best players. Ilya Kovalchuk was a point a game in this series at 7 points in 7 games. Brodeur had a goals against average of 2.05 and a .918 save percentage. The best players on the team played like the best players. And unfortunately, I'm not 100% sure I can say the same for Philadelphia. Now, Giroux played well while he was out there, and Briere played well while he was out there, Voracek. But I don't know that they played to the level that they're capable of playing to. And, you know, all these things came together, and that is why Philadelphia is going bye-bye. I hate to say that I would lose all of my Philadelphia Flyers homers viewers, but, you know, if I do, that's unfortunate. I hope you come back next year when I may end up picking against your team again. Who knows? Just to be fun. We'll move on to the Western Conference. The Western Conference 2v8 matchup featured the number 2 St. Louis Blues taking on the number 8 Los Angeles Kings. I predicted that St. Louis was going to win this series in 6 games. Unfortunately, Los Angeles brought out the brooms and swept them in 4 straight. Quick, and more quick. That's the long and short of these whole playoffs, really, for Los Angeles. St. Louis only scores 6 goals in those 4 games. Quick save percentage in this series was .941, which is just unbelievable for a 4-game stretch. Quick just played phenomenally. From the big, like, triple toe save in the first game, right on through, he was proving why he is a stud and a superstar in this league. And actually, if not for Jonathan Quick, Dustin Brown would probably be the runaway favorite for the Conn Smythe on this team. Dustin Brown is playing everywhere. He's got 11 points in their 9 games, and he's just I've seen tremendous two-way play out of Dustin Brown these whole playoffs, and he would be the one getting my vote for Conn Smythe if it wasn't for Jonathan Quick. Los Angeles Stars playing like stars, and that's exactly what we said about in the New Jersey series. Dustin Brown had 6 points in this series. Anze Kopitar had 6 points in this series. Drew Doughty, a calming, poised presence on defense. Played phenomenal defense all series, and really has been playing it all playoffs. Doughty has been very, very solid. So it's their star players, and of course Quick. Their star players playing like star players. On the other hand, you take a look at a guy like Brian Elliott, and I, of course, was singing Brian Elliott's praises, which deservedly so. He had a great season. Brian Elliott in this series played good. He played all right, but he didn't play up to not nearly up to his potential. You're talking about a guy through the regular season. Had such a great regular season, and along with Yaroslav Halak is splitting the Jennings Trophy this year, I believe. But Elliott didn't play great, coupled with bad defense in front of him. So bad defense definitely contributed to his numbers in this series, which was a 3.29 goals against average and an .854 save percentage. And that's unfortunately not going to get it done in the playoffs. It's numbers that are pretty well as bad as Brizgalov's were. And it was Los Angeles' commitment to discipline and defense that really highlighted, exposed, whatever you want to call it, a big weakness for St. Louis. And that weakness is top-end scoring. St. Louis found their success this year through tight defense and opportune scoring, we'll put it that way. They did not have a single player on their team that topped 55 points on the season, and yet somehow they ended up winning their division and being the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. So that goes to show you that well, certainly, in this case anyways, defense wins divisions. But no, defense definitely wins games. But you need your offense there too, and I think the lack of real solid top-end scoring on St. Louis was part of their undoing, because when the time came, they didn't have any answer for Jonathan Quick. So LA is moving on, deservedly so. And the other series in the West, the number 3 Phoenix Coyotes taking on the number 4 Nashville Predators. I predicted that Nashville was going to pretty well walk in this series, win this series in 5 games. Unfortunately, Phoenix flipped the script on me, and Phoenix ended up winning the series in 5 games. When people take a look back at this series, one of the main things they're going to look at are the suspensions to Alexander Radulov and Andrei Kostitsyn. That ended up being a series-defining distraction, and you could tell it just by watching the games. After that whole curfew fiasco happened, Nashville just didn't find their legs. They played all right. They just didn't play as well as they played in the first round or had played leading up to the beginning of the playoffs. And you know, you look at it in what would everybody knew was going to be a low-scoring series. Goaltending is king, and you look at the numbers for the goaltenders. Mike Smith had a .943 save percentage. Pekka Rinne's was good. It was .912, just wasn't as good as Smith's. So, I mean, a low-scoring series. Goaltending is king. Smith ended up winning the goaltending battle. I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself, but after the second game, Nashville's offense completely dried up. The first 2 games, they scored 6 goals. They scored 3 goals in each game. But in the next 3 games, they only scored 3 goals. So after the second game, their offense just completely disappeared for a team that was a relatively potent offense that was only made better by Radulov coming back over from the KHL. But, I mean, 3 goals in 3 games, unless you're getting shutouts every game for Rinne, is not going to cut it. And again, I don't want to really put any of the blame in this series on Pekka Rinne. He didn't play bad. He played good over the whole span of the series. Really, Nashville's offense just couldn't pick it up. The only thing I will really say about Pekka Rinne, he kind of had a bit of an adrenaline dump in the first 2 games. Because the first 2 games was, what was it? It was 4-3 at Nashville, and then 5-3 Phoenix? Or 4-3 Phoenix and then 5-3 Phoenix. No, yeah, 4-3 Phoenix and then 5-3 Phoenix. So, I mean, you have Rinne, who gave up 9 goals on, I know it was 60-some shots. So, I mean, that's not a very good save percentage. That's somewhere around an .860 save percentage in those 2 games. So, I think getting past the first round, it was, you know, Rinne here in the second round. I think he did have a bit of an adrenaline dump in the first couple of games. The next 3 games, he played very well. Obviously, to bring that save percentage for the whole series up to .912, he must have played very well, just by the numbers. But in the first 2 games, I think he did have a bit of an adrenaline dump, and that could have ultimately ended up being a contributing factor to costing them the series. And the big thing that Phoenix did, Phoenix isn't flashy about the way they play hockey, but they're very balanced. Phoenix scored 12 goals in this series, only 12 goals in 5 games, but those 12 goals were from 9 different skaters. So it's a very, very, very balanced attack. And overall in the playoffs, they've scored 29 goals. They've come from 13 different skaters, with Antoine Vermette leading the team with 5 goals. So, I mean, it's a very, very balanced attack that Phoenix has put out there. Like I say, 13 different skaters with at least 1 goal. So you have Phoenix moving on. So again, I call myself 2-2 for round 2, 5-7 overall for the playoffs. I did want to just take a quick second in this video and talk about some front runners for the Conn Smythe. This is around the time where you start thinking about, you know, I wonder who could win the Conn Smythe. We all know the Conn Smythe will go to someone on the team that wins the Stanley Cup. I mean, very infrequently has it ever gone to someone on the losing team. I don't think it's happened since Giguère. I might be wrong in saying that, but if I'm looking at the front runners for these teams, if this particular team either makes it to the Stanley Cup, wins the Stanley Cup. With the Rangers, gotta look at Henrik Lundqvist. 8 wins, 25 goals against in 14 games, a 1.68 goals against average, .937 save percentage with 1 shutout. You know what? New York's got some really good players. They got Brad Richards, they got Marian Gaborik, but I think if you're looking for a front runner for the Conn Smythe on New York, you got to give it to Lundqvist. Much the same way, if you're looking at one for Phoenix, you got to give it to Mike Smith. 8 wins, 21 goals against in 11 games, 1.77 goals against, 948 save percentage with 2 shutouts. When you have nobody else on Phoenix that I think that is playing a point-a-game pace, I don't think there is anyway. I think you gotta, on Phoenix, you certainly gotta give it to Mike Smith. And if you look at Los Angeles, you gotta give it to Jonathan Quick. I mean, 8 wins in 9 games. They've only played 9 games because they swept St. Louis and they beat Vancouver in 5. So they've won 8 of those 9 games. Only 14 goals against, a 1.55 goals against average, 949 save percentage, 1/100th better than Quick. Or sorry, 1/1000th better than Quick. Sorry. With 1 shutout, you got to give it there sorry, I was comparing Quick's numbers there to Mike Smith's. You got to get on Los Angeles. You got to give it to Jonathan Quick. The only team remaining where you can make a case for someone that's not a goaltender are the Devils. If the Devils ended up winning the Stanley Cup, right now, Ilya Kovalchuk is the front runner for the Conn Smythe. He's got 12 points in 11 games. He has the highest average shift length on the whole team, defensemen included. He's the top scorer remaining in the playoffs. We have Claude Giroux and Danny Briere, who are, of course, gone. And he is one of just 2 forwards in these playoffs, the other being Ryan Callahan, averaging over 24 minutes of ice time per game. So, you know, Kovalchuk, I think, is the only forward on any of the teams remaining in the playoffs that is the front runner on their team to win the Conn Smythe. Again, a case can be made for Dustin Brown on Los Angeles, I like to think anyways, but with Quick there, I don't think you could give it to anybody besides Jonathan Quick on that team. But Kovalchuk, for sure, is the front runner on the Devils. That's my reaction video to the second round. Also talked about some Conn Smythe front runners there. I'm going to be giving you a little bit later today my predictions for the third round because, again, NHL not being very accommodating to guys like me. Third round starts tonight with the Kings and Coyotes, and the Rangers and Devils start on Monday. That's the reaction video. Stay tuned for the prediction video coming up next. I'm Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, chilling with the big gold belt in the background. Check out the predictions for round 3.